Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm very excited to have my good friend Jason Haddix joining today. Had Jason on my previous podcast, The Hacker Factory, a couple times. Once on his own, and then another episode with Daniel Miessler and NahamSec during RSA last year about content creation for cybersecurity professionals. So I'm excited to have you joining on my new show, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil. Congratulations for the recent award and everything. Well deserved, and happy to be back on.
Thank you. Glad to have you back on. I've been planning to get you on, so finally I got you on, and I think the timing is probably better or works out pretty well since there's a lot of new things going on with you. But for the folks listening, Jason and I met through Bugcrowd. I'd followed Jason for years. I'd found Jason through the Ethical Hacker Network, some of the articles and stuff he wrote on there, and then followed him on Twitter. And one of the things as a pen tester and doing web app pen testing, I learned a lot from Jason from the bug bounty stuff he was posting. And so we got to meet when I become a Bugcrowd ambassador and became friends. And so we get to run into each other at conferences and stuff. And so always great to have Jason as a resource to be able to ask questions, because you've been very helpful over the years since we've known each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while now, so that's awesome. Since mid Bugcrowd when I was there, and the ambassador program was pretty special, right? That was super cool.
Yes.
And so it's been a journey since, and glad to be back on.
Yeah, so you've got some new things to share, but just in case some of the folks listening haven't heard of you before, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing your hacker origin story.
Sure. So my name is Jason Haddix. I go by J Haddix online, and I have been hacking for about 20 years, give or take, depending on when you want to hit the start button. But I've always been a computer kid. Grew up video gaming, and in my origin story, I actually had a Darknet Diaries podcast about it with Jack Sider. But basically, when I was in my early 20s, my friends wanted to go out to bars, and I was too young. I was 1 year too young to go out and enjoy a good time with them. And so that led me to go search for a fake ID, of which I found a friend at school, and who said he could get me one. Back then, got one, and it was of not very good quality, and so I thought, hey, maybe I could do this better myself. Started Googling, and eventually landed in kind of like what was the precursor to the dark web. Carter's Market, Shadow Crew, Counterfeit Library, all these sites that used to exist, but they were on the public web instead of through Tor. And so through going there and trying to learn how to make fake IDs, I also got to know a whole bunch of, back then, what was the early web hacking type of underground crew, which was associated to the Carters who were printing fake credit cards, and the ID makers who were part of the ecosystems who made IDs. But somebody needed to supply those dumps, and a lot of that was early days SQL injection, early days local file include vulnerabilities. And so I learned a little bit of web hacking from there, and then figured out it was a career through a random class at school. And then Shadow Crew got busted, and I kind of got scared straight a little bit. All my homies in there kind of went to jail. Luckily, I didn't do much on the forum, and so I managed to stay out of trouble. But so that was how I kind of landed in it. And then I figured out penetration testing was a thing, and so ever since I figured that out in the elective I had at community college, while all that was going on, it had been a goal of mine to be a pen tester. And I had known some Cisco routing stuff and just general computer knowledge, and I kind of put all my focus into that. So Went to a small consultancy, worked there for a couple of years called Redspin, then left to be a consultant at HP as part of Shadow Labs, which was their internal pen testing team that consulted out to other people, and built a phenomenal team at Shadow Labs with Daniel Miessler. And then went to Bugcrowd after there, did a bunch of roles at Bugcrowd. And before that, I was hunting on Bugcrowd as a hunter. I think I was number one in, like 2016 or something like that. And I think I'm all-time number 60th right now on Bugcrowd still. And left there to go to be the CISO at Ubisoft, a video game company. And then most recently, I just finished my tenure with Buttobot, which was a red teaming company. And now I'm on my own.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of awesome. So what are you doing with your new venture?
Yeah. So what I had been doing over the last year was teaching. A lot of teaching in modern application analysis, modern bug bounty hunting, modern reconnaissance for red teams. And so I had built a class called the Bug Hunters Methodology Live, which is based off of many of my free talks. And I had just leveled it up to, like 300%. And I've been giving this class, and I started to realize that, hey, I really, really enjoy teaching. And so, yeah, we ran the course 2 times last year. We had over 550 students sign up for 2 sessions last year. And so we're planning to do a whole bunch of training. So my new company is called Arcanum Information Security. And so we will be continuing on the training vibe. So we'll be continue giving the Bug Hunters Methodology live training. And then we have several trainings that are in development right now that are just things that interest me. So modern red teaming, using AI for practical security, and how to integrate it into kind of like your daily life as a security practitioner. Modern security leadership, which is my work as a CISO, kind of condensed into what that looks like in, kind of a modern organization. So a couple of classes in dev right now. And then we're also doing consulting for general pen tests, web application pen tests and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we are right now. We'll see where it goes, but 2 weeks old at the moment. So yeah.
So very cool. So I know you've been doing a lot of stuff with AI. So what are some of the things you've been leveraging AI for?
Yeah. So that content, I gave a talk called Red, Blue, Purple AI at an internal conference for a company. And it went really well. And so the crux of that talk, which I will be giving the talk at Hack SpaceCon, where we'll see each other next, I believe. Yes. So I'm giving that talk there. It's basically about how, I don't know, right now there's a lot of fluff around AI and how to use it. And then there's a lot of usage of it or discussion of AI that is non-practical, meaning that, most people aren't going to set up a, 15K, computer and run their own models at home, right? And so the class and the talk is about what can you do right now with the current easy to set up or easy to use models, which includes GPT-4. How do you prompt them to get exactly what you need? And then what applications can you use them for in different parts of security? So there's this mind map called the CISO mind map by this guy named Rafik. And he does this mind map that breaks down all the domains of security that a CISO will have to manage, but it also is a good visualization of kind of every portion of a security program that you could possibly have. Now, not everybody needs all of that, but it is a good visualization. And so what I started doing with my friends at night was just being like, what practically can we use GPT-4 for to help in these areas? And we ended up coming up with all of these crazy prompts and all of these things that really can level up your security program all over the place via your red team, via your blue team, via your purple team, policy, executives, all these different areas. And it's all prompt engineering. And there is some configuration on the technical side of, how we institute some of that. But that's kind of what the crux of that content is. And I think it's really cool because, there's a lot of areas where we can absolutely up level and, have some shortcuts by using GPT-4 in our day-to-day security lives. And so some of the things we talk about are building, defensive rules in the open source kind of SOC stack, which is like Suricata, Yara, even you can build Splunk queries, you can build all kinds of crazy stuff. And there's some gotchas into building those defensive measures. But, in any given day, you can take a certain type of attack. And if you prompt GPT-4, right, and you give it the information and the context, it can get you about 90% of the way with, a defensive rule for the newest and greatest attack. You can also build scanner rules. You can use it to help your phishing campaign. I mean, we have a bunch of stuff packed in there. So, and this is all practical usage of it, not something that you would have to, spend time developing. It's really, what can I do with it tomorrow? So that's kind of the stuff I've been really interested in lately with the AI stuff. I am getting into buying my own $15,000 AI box and running my own models and stuff like that. That stuff interests me as well. But that's like, that's level 2 or level 3. So, yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing what you do with that. And, you kind of mentioned a mind map. It was interesting. Was watching a YouTube video yesterday on how to create mind maps using ChatGPT, using some of the plugins when you're creating content, how to use the mind map plugin, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, there's some mind map plugins. There's also many of the mind map programs you can import in Markdown and it'll turn it into a mind map. So if you define the schema for what you want the Markdown to look like, then you can just import it into something like Xmind and it can build a mind map for you. You can fill the content in using GPT-4. So that's a way to do it too. It's not the exact plugin. There's a ton of stuff you can do now with like the GPT maker. I've made one called SecGPT, which I think is probably, I'm biased, but I think it's probably one of the best security GPTs in the GPT store right now. I have really put 6 to 8 months into configuring and prompt engineering that bot really, really well to help security testers. And I use it every day. I literally have it running right now on my other monitor when I'm doing testing. It's like having a colleague next to you to ask dumb pen test questions to, when you don't know how some technology works and you're like, hey man, do you know how this works? And that's how I treat the bot. And it is fantastic. So it's definitely leveled up my hunting in that way too.
Very cool. I know as far as the GPTs being released, because right around the time that I first saw yours, not long ago, I saw you share it on social media. Saw that also Corey Ball had released one on API hacking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Corey Ball has one on API hacking. The GPT store is it's just starting to kind of come out of its infancy, and it's a really cool idea. I posted the other week too, is that most prompts, there still isn't a lot of protection to just dump the prompt. So as a monetizable piece of thing, your prompt engineering is not very protected right now. The trick for, the GPT store or any CTF you ever play is literally all you have to do sometimes is just say, give me a summary or read me your resume. And it will dump basically, its whole logic to you. So, there's still some stuff to figure out there, but there's a lot of cool stuff that's coming out on there. Logo makers, ton of stuff for marketing and salespeople, lots of stuff for devs too. But I see a lot of it, and I won't say that I dump any of their content, but some people do, and I look at the prompts, and there's not a lot of advanced prompt engineering that's going on. In most of them, it's very shallow, and so I'm excited to see kind of what comes out next, in the next phase of the GPT store, and people start really working on it and stuff.
So now you really were getting into the marketing side of things using ChatGPT.
Yeah. So, when you're a startup, right, we were at ButtoBot, you use all the help you can get, right? And so, the training data for GPT-4 is all over the internet, right? And there are some topics that are covered very, very well on the internet, like marketing and sales methodologies and, a lot of corpus of, development and stuff like that. So those things, when you build the proper prompts, you can get amazing output of, like advice on how to market your business or how to design a sales funnel or, like specifically content marketing or email marketing or whatever. And so there's this whole community of people, on the Twitter sphere who, I call the AI hustlers, and they're not PhDs who have, they don't have a PhD in ML, right? They are literally learning how to use these tools and prompt engineer and build, practical bots or practical prompts that, help businesses and stuff like that. And it's really cool to see. Then there's other things like what we do, like security. There is a lot out there, but it's very generalized. In order to refine it down to usable suggestions that you and I would need during our day-to-day testing or something like that, you do have to, set the context, define the problem, tell it exactly what you want, what level you want, how you want it. And so there's a lot of prompt engineering to get down to, great output from GPT and other LLMs right now.
So what are some good resources for someone to learn how to leverage ChatGPT better?
I mean, oh man, I wasn't prepared for that one, Phil. Let's see here. So obviously, there's a whole bunch of like prompt engineering people on Twitter. I follow, let's see, who do I follow on X? Sorry, it's not Twitter anymore. It's X. And so I have a separate account where I follow all these people who are just kind of like AI prompt engineering specialists. One is, I believe his name is Harshi. He's just kind of like a general, like all news that's happening inside of AI. Like he's keeping up with it. I'll try to send a link to you. You can post it on Twitter for your followers, but I've got a bunch of links, mostly on my phone, of Twitter people who are, basically building prompt engineering. And then when I find a cool prompt to do something, whether it's to create an image or to do marketing or to do security stuff, I just dump it into either Notion or I dump it into a mind map and I save it. And then I try to refine it as I go. If you are, and on the other end of the cycle, right? If you are getting into security, or if you're in security and you want to like kind of intersect security and AI, the intersection of security and AI will be the implementation of LLMs to business, right? So things like ChatGPT 4 hooked up to your bank. And so, I think that a core skill set for any hacker in the future is going to be natural language hacking, which basically means prompt injection. So you'll have to learn how to do that. And there's some excellent like games like Gandalf.Lakera.net, I believe is the most popular one, but it's got like 8 levels of this wizard who protects a password, and you have to use natural language to trick the wizard to give you the password. And it's a really creative experience. I did it with my kids who thought it was a blast because, it's they're being a hacker. And, there might be a new definition for a hacker, coming up, right? It might not be someone who puts single quotes and code syntax into boxes anymore. It might be someone who's creative enough to say the right words and trick a bot into revealing private information. So, I've got a whole bunch of those I can pass them to you for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting times. And, some of the things you meant defensive wise were interesting because, you hear so many people talking about the hacker perspective, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about the defensive side. And I think that's pretty exciting to see what AI does for, defensive products.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people doing talks about, AI and how it'll impact security and development. And they worry a lot about the code aspect of, its training data being like Stack Overflow, which is, predominantly like not great code. And so there's been some research done. I can't remember which university did it, where they actually like benchmarked, like, is the code that comes out of either Copilot or GPT-4 inherently less secure than just, your average developer code? And based off whatever metrics they did, I think the outcome was saying that like, no, it's about the same. And so I don't think that we're going to get like this world where we step backwards, which a lot of people say that's going to happen because, people are using code from AI. I think that, or LLMs, I think that it's going to be roughly okay or the same. And then so other people say that, like, well, the red teams and the bad guys will get this giant boon to, to be able to attack organizations and people better because they now have access to GPTs and LLMs that can help them. And, I actually think that the boon is to defensive people. I think that the speed at which you can learn defense and affect change, with some of the products, with signatures, with heuristics, you can build all that stuff with GPT really, really quickly. And you can debug it really, really quickly too. And I think that defenders are going to get leveled up. And then eventually, when we do get to the level of where kind of a little bit of snake oily demos are going on right now, right? Of like where you have an AI assistant who's like, like calls you and is like, there's an intrusion. And it's like, it's like, we've correlated these 17 data points and like, there's an attacker, it's like that will actually happen because one of the superpowers of, LLMs is data correlation. And especially if you agentize your LLMs, you make them individual little bots and then they can correlate with each other and they have like a master bot that controls them. This is the kind of stuff you can do, with different technologies now. And so we will get there and that'll be really interesting. And so I just don't think that the attackers actually have the leg up for very long, maybe a year at most. And then I think defenders will run with this thing and be better than ever. It's just my personal opinion. So
yeah, then you got to figure too, these CISOs and executives will be looking into these different products and they're going to want to know if AI is being used in it. And I think that's going to be one of the prerequisites people are looking for when they're looking for new products.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to want AI assisted X, Y, and Z. The second question that gets brought up a lot is it going to take our jobs, right? That's a very valid question for any human to ask, right? Like, and, the answer is no. I think it stays a tool. I think it becomes a ubiquitous tool, right? Like, in defense, like if you don't know some form of packet capture, right? Like, like almost everybody who's done defense is either going to, have experience with Wireshark or TCP dump or something like that, right? At least at one point. It'll be a ubiquitous tool like that, right? Like for offensive people, we have Nmap. Everybody's run Nmap at some point or Metasploit or something, and it's going to be even more ubiquitous than some of those tools. But I don't think it'll replace. I think that it gets you about 80 to 90% of the way, like I say in a lot of these scenarios. But then you still have to have the knowledge of being a specialist in that field to finish the process. And also, you have to prompt it correctly, which you will have to be, at least a decent prompt engineer to get it to where you want it to go.
So when you were at your previous role at Bugcrowd, you got to kind of return more to some areas that you did earlier in your career. So how was it to get back into red teaming and compared to when you kind of started? So how was that?
It was amazing. It was fantastic. So it was like a breath of fresh air. I had been mostly doing security leadership at Ubisoft. And, one of the things is, that I told people when I left, I love that team. I love the people there, and that team that we built and the things that we accomplished. But, you have to roll out of bed every day and love your job, because otherwise, what are you doing? Right. At least that's my personal opinion. A lot of people will say you don't need to do that and your job is just a job. That's absolutely valid as well. But I feel like I live a better life if I really think my job is interesting. And it's not that I didn't think that job was interesting. It didn't fill my cup like offensive security did. So went to Bugcrowd, helped them build up their capabilities from what, they currently had, and, kind of moved into the red teaming world. And that was a blast. I mean, the campaigns we ran, the stuff we saw, just super, super fun. It was really cool also to bring my really hardcore Recon into kind of the red teaming world. I think that predominantly a lot of red teamers, had a very strict idea about what red teaming methodology looked like. And so for a year, I went out kind of on the conference circuit and the training circuit and talked to red teamers about modern reconnaissance that really came from bug bounty, right? and like teaching them about like, like how to find these esoteric assets that could be initial access. And so that was super fun. I also worked a lot in the like credential exposure world. So, basically my roots from the dark web, like going back and doing threat intelligence specifically for credential exposures with some people and using that as initial access in a lot of the red teaming engagements. And so teaching people about that was really fun too, like about how actual bad guy economies work. And then, obviously I learned a tremendous amount, right? So when I left red teaming, that was at the beginning of HP when I kind of stopped doing modern red teaming. Back then it was modern red teaming. I mean, you can call, Metasploit and some pass the hash. That was the tip top technology back then. And now it's much different. It's much, much different. It's malware dev. It is bypassing really advanced EDR. It is, companies who have, fleet deployments of, really good 2FA. It's not as easy as it used to be. And it was really fun to learn all those sides again and get up to date with all the newest C2s and initial access methods and, get back to pivoting. And so it was a lot of fun. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, benefited from what you're doing because you're going back, posting on social media some of the resources and things that were very helpful. And that's one of the things I was pointing people in the direction that were looking for more red team content. So follow Jason. Jason's, gotten back into red teaming over the past year or so. He's posted some good resources. So I was really enjoying seeing the stuff that you were finding and sharing out there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm done with it. I'm still learning, and I'm still, so as part of Arcanum, we'll probably do, a lot of training. So like, 60 to 70% of our business will probably be training, but, we're still going to do a lot of consulting. And I can see a world where, I build up, capabilities in a team again, and I do it as part of Arcanum. And, I don't want to let it go yet. It was really fun. I met a lot of really smart people. Red teaming has a specific call to it too that is it is different than other types of offensive security testing, because you do really get to act like a bad guy and you get to do all the phishing and although like it's difficult, but it's it's super fun. So I'm not going to say I'm out of it or anything like that. I think that I still going to do it. And then pen tests, like if you do a modern pen test methodology too, you can add some of that stuff in to be more red teamy. But you're not a team really. You're just doing like kind of like pen test plus or whatever you want to call it. Like I'll still do a lot of that in engagements with Arcanum. So hopefully that don't lose anything. And I've been bug bounty hunting again. So that's been fun. So yeah,
that's cool. So has any of the things you've learned help you out on the bug bounty side?
Honestly, the places where I had to level up were the malware dev, and the tools development. And, I think actually my bug bounty experience, which I never let go of, helped me more with the red teaming than the red teaming helped me with the bug bounty stuff. I think that it's just like a skill set to be able to test web apps and APIs and, any type of external system. And, a lot of red teamers, that's not their initial bag. They come from a network pen test background and then they graduate into red teaming. And so they don't do a lot of that always. Some are really great at it. And then, but a lot aren't. And so my web background really, helped me on all my engagements, and my Recon background really helped me in all my engagements. So I would say that the bug bounty hunting actually helped me with my red teaming more.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's one of the interesting things when you mention the Recon and stuff. It just really seems like over the years, the compliance-based pen testing has really limited the amount of Recon that people are doing. You've got 1,000 IP addresses and, people skip out a lot of opportunities for doing more reconnaissance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we used to, back in the day, right, we used to just have internals and externals. And then we delineated it, because internals and externals in the beginning were mostly like externals were unauthenticated tests of websites, and then service level auditing of like, services on other ports. And then you had the internal, which is, kind of remained the same, like internal pen test. You jump in on a network and try to get domain admin. And then, it evolved to the web being mostly, the predominant technology that people need to test. So then you had the web application pen test, and that's an authenticated version, and usually scoped on one site. But, then you had bug bounty come along, and it was like, oh, and, and all these breaches too. It's like, if you look at the initial access vector for a lot of breaches, it's not usually the main website. It's like some broken piece of infrastructure technology that the company is using that is unpatched, or, some API that is not like the main API. And so, yeah, it really did help, because, that's the kind of stuff I looked for at Bugcrowd, right? That was my specialty, was Recon. It's like, I'm the guy who can find all the lost stuff. And, and so that was really a boon to all that testing. And, I think, the industry fluctuates a lot too. I mean, we had a lot of phishing in the red team kind of game, the last, 3 years, I would say. And then, now we have sharper, better phishing protections than ever. And so you can kind of see the ebb and flow of kind of where people have to put their skill sets in order to be good at, any offensive security, really. And, it's interesting to watch, honestly. Like, if you look at 3 years ago, file-based phishing payloads were all the rage, and were kind of like, what people use to get initial access, bad guys and red teamers. And then now it's man in the middle based phishing. And even that's getting harder and harder every month, or every 6 months, because of different protections. And so it might go back to where, you need to start popping services again or something. You never know. So
Yeah, that's one of the things too that I found valuable from doing network pen testing, is just be able to do some web app, because, you get into some of these environments, it's hard to get a foothold, but notoriously a lot of these IT applications or security apps are running in a Java application server.
Yeah.
Like Apache Tomcat or Red Hat JBoss. And sometimes those are the only ways in, and some people overlook learning anything about web app.
Yeah, I mean, if you came on the podcast for, any tips and tricks to kind of gather, if you're doing internals, so a really good friend of mine, Gunnar, and I made a tool called Cloud Recon, which we called it Cloud Recon because the original idea was that we were using it for cloud enumeration. But what the tool does is it's a super fast scanner for SSL. You give it a range, and it blasts that range every IP for any 443 port, and it does a half SSL handshake, and will pull back the information in the certificate. And so, we had been talking about this to basically blast all of the cloud ranges and get all their secret information, and then figure out what a company who, like Tesla had online in the cloud. But what's really cool that you can do with this is on internals is you can scan the internal network range with a tool like Cloud Recon. It bypasses most SOC tools because it only completes a half SSL connection. And it tells you all of the hosts that any internal web server is hosting. I can't tell you how many internal web servers I've seen that DevOps stands up that are literally, they're just front ends for like a Linux command shell, right? Like it's like enter your command in this web GUI and the server will run it, and no authentication. And, to use it as a kickoff point for, kind of escalation, because then you pop that box and you see what kind of creds it's running locally, and then you crack those or you pass those, and then, you can pivot around. And that's one that we worked with really well in the last year on the internal part. The other one was, I saw this amazing talk at Blue Hat, is basically there's 3 or 4 open source AI model building scaffolds, I'll call them. So basically they're web apps that help you ingest and get your data ready to train your AI on. And there's only like 4 of them. that are open source that are not super expensive. So most companies who are beginning to develop their own AI internally are using one of these apps. They're full of security vulnerabilities. And so there's this amazing talk at Blue Hat. I'll have to go find it, but about fingerprinting these servers and basically exploiting them because they're Swiss cheese right now. And you immediately win because you have all the data that's loaded into there, which is, like proprietary data of the company. And, those are really hot right now as internal kind of targets, right? Who needs DA when you have the entire data lake of a company, like already downloaded into an app that you broke into because it had like a local file include that, feels like 1995 or something like that. So.
So for someone wanting to get into offensive security, so what's kind of your recommendation where to start?
So you got to have some kind of base, right? So I think that most of my students, I push them through kind of the entry level Code Academy courses, which I think are really good, bite size. You can pick them up, you can put them down, and if you want to do web hacking, then take the HTML, JavaScript, DevOps, the whole DevOps track. Build your own app and just get comfortable with like, okay, I at least know some general coding, right? And then take the Python course. I feel like Python is a very good starter language for most hackers. And then take the command line course there too. So it's like 6 or 7 courses that you end up taking, and that's the prereq that I have a lot of my mentees take. And then we can move on to the security stuff because at least you have a little bit of a fundamental on kind of how the web works, how your servers are spun up, how they look from the inside. You've got a little bit of familiarity with Linux or Unix, and so that's a good starting place. And then so if you want to go to web, and you want to be in offensive security, the best free resources is WebSec Academy right now, right? It's Portswigger makes WebSec Academy. Portswigger also makes Burp, which is a ubiquitous tool for web testing nowadays. And they have a whole bunch of free challenges and free lab guides and things for all the different types of vulnerabilities you might find. And so that's kind of the best resource that exists right now for web hacking. I think for internals and NetPen, I was just having this discussion with a mentee of mine. There's actually not a ton out there to train people how to do modern NetPen and internals. There's a lot of red team trainings, but they kind of like differ from what like a general pen test would look like. I think TCM Security has one of the only courses on modern internals, but there's not a ton more. I mean, maybe if you go the SANS route, there's a lot there, but those are really expensive, hard to get access to when you're a new person. So, I think that if that's the way you want to go, you got to kind of scrounge together and Google your face off, right? Like kind of like we did back in the day before all these resources existed, right? We're just like Googling every blog we could find on how this stuff works. And then if you're reverse engineer and exploit, that's not really my specialty. So I don't have like a lovely set of links there, but that is a path you could take, is being a reverse engineer and exploitation person. And I'm sure there's a wonderful track out there somewhere. But yeah, that's what I got right now.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share before we end the episode?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing you at HackSpaceCon. I think that'll be really fun. If you're around at HackSpaceCon, come say hi. I'll be doing the red, blue, purple AI talk, which hopefully should be fun. Obviously Arcanum Security is, doing training. So the Bug Hunters Methodology Live the next one will be in March. We do it 4 times a year. So you also get access to a Discord we just launched with a bunch of private channels. And we hunt every month together on bug bounty programs, and we share techniques and tools and everything like that. So it's a lot of fun. And then, if you are looking for pen test work with, some really qualified engineers, me and a couple of buddies of mine, let me know. Reach out to me on Twitter at jhaddix. And thanks so much for having me on, Phil. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining. It was a pleasure to have you on and good to catch up. And I look forward to seeing you at HackSpaceCon. And for everyone watching or listening, we'll be sharing in the show notes Jason's social media links, and so you'll be able to find him as well as his new company. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to The Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Phillip Wylie. Until next time.